Hi, my name is Haley Butcher, and for this video I will be discussing the problem of evil that is found in Chapter 7 of Just the Arguments. This is the argument. Premise 1. God is omnipotent, omniscient, and morally perfect. Premise 2. If God is omnipotent, then God has the power to eliminate all evil. Conclusion 1. God has the power to eliminate all evil. Premise 3. If God is omniscient, then God knows evil exists. Conclusion 2. God knows evil exists. Premise 4. If God is morally perfect, then God has the desire to eliminate all evil. Conclusion 3. God has the desire to eliminate all evil. Premise 5. Evil exists. Premise 6. If evil exists, then God doesn't have the power to eliminate all evil, or doesn't have the desire to eliminate all evil. Conclusion 4. God doesn't have the power to eliminate all evil, or doesn't know evil exists, or doesn't have the desire to eliminate all evil. Premise 7. If God doesn't have the power to eliminate all evil, or doesn't know evil exists, or doesn't have the desire to eliminate all evil, then God does not exist. Conclusion 5. God does not exist. Okay, so this argument is deductively valid because the conclusions are formed from the premises, and it uses the form of modus ponens starting at premise 2. Modus ponens uses the form if P, then Q, P, therefore Q. So, if the premises are true, then the conclusion would also have to be true. Because this argument has more than one conclusion, I'm going to discuss each premise with the corresponding conclusion and give thoughts and some objections as well. Starting with premise 1, which says God is omnipotent, omniscient, and morally perfect, is something that I would agree with, and also what Aquinas says, which is that God is PKG, so all-powerful, all-knowing, and all-good. I would agree with this statement. However, if an objection were to be raised, it might be along the lines of how can you prove that God is all these things? And so my response to that would be that you could look at the Bible and the history of God, and you will find examples of showing how he was all-powerful, all-knowing, and all-good. And from those stories in the Bible, you can see that God does not make mistakes. Using the form of modus ponens, premise 2 says that if God is omnipotent, then he has the power to eliminate all evil. And so if someone had the power, or if someone had all the possible power imaginable, then surely they'd be able to eliminate one certain thing. And so corresponding with that, conclusion 1 states that God has the power to eliminate all evil. So if this conclusion is true, then God must be all-powerful. However, as I will discuss later on, just because God is all-powerful and has the ability to eliminate all evil does not mean he will choose to do so. Premise 3 says that if God is omniscient, then God knows evil exists, and this is followed by conclusion 2 saying that God knows evil exists. So obviously if God is all-knowing, then he would know evil exists, but someone could ask this main question. If God is all these things, so all-powerful, all-knowing, and all-good, then why would he have let sin or evil enter the world if he knew it would come and if he could prevent it? So my answer for this is going to be a theme throughout this argument, and that is, since God is all-powerful, all-knowing, and all-good, he must have a greater unforeseen use for that evil that is in our world. Evil can be described as not a being or a nature, but an absence of something. So in this case, it'd be the absence of good. Furthermore, Aquinas believed that we humans are not complex enough to understand the answer of why God allows sin. But Aquinas argues that 1. God only permits evil for some greater unforeseen good, and 2. God allows the defective sin so he can manifest his greater goodness in us through him as our Savior. To continue with premise 4, if God is morally perfect, then God has the desire to eliminate all evil. I would argue that just because God is perfect does not in fact mean that he would want to eliminate evil. So the conclusion following this of God has the desire to eliminate all evil, in my opinion, cannot be based on the fact that God is morally perfect. God is perfect, we are not. I would even go farther to say that some humans are evil, and just because this is so, God would not want to eliminate those people because they are his creation and he loves everyone. To continue, premise 5 says that evil exists. Now this I have no problem with believing because, if you look around, turn on the news, there's your proof right there. We've got the pandemic, people are getting murdered, there's injustices, and so I would say that evil has entered our world. And to continue with premise 6, it says that if evil exists, then either God doesn't have the power to eliminate all evil or doesn't have the desire to eliminate all evil. Since it has already been established in premise 2 and conclusion 1 that God is in fact all-powerful and would be able to eliminate evil if he wanted to, it must be that God doesn't have the desire to do so. Conclusion 4 says that God doesn't have the power to eliminate all evil, or doesn't have the desire to eliminate all evil. As I stated earlier, God does have the power to eliminate evil, so it would have to be the second option, that he just doesn't want to. Lastly, premise 7 says that if God doesn't have the power to eliminate all evil, or doesn't know evil exists, or doesn't have the desire to eliminate all evil, then God doesn't exist. This is followed by the final conclusion that God does not exist. I'm going to object this premise because I think that even if God was not all-powerful or not all-knowing, he would still be God. If you look at other historical cultures like Greek mythology, Poseidon was considered a god even though he was not all-knowing and he only controlled the oceans and horses. So it could be argued that the Christian God would still be God even if he was not omnipotent and omniscient. Secondly, as I talked about earlier, God has the power to eliminate evil, but he chooses not to do so because of a greater unforeseen plan. So by premise 7 saying that God doesn't have the desire to eliminate all evil, then he does not exist would make no sense. If I were to say that there is a 100% chance proven, hypothetically, that God does exist, and I know this and you know this, and then I look outside and see someone getting murdered, and I know that's kind of like a harsh example, but then I would see that evil does exist. And since I already know that God exists, the only reasonable explanation for seeing that evil act would be that God has no desire to eliminate evil. And so in conclusion, I looked at each premise and conclusion of this argument while discussing the truth of each premise as well as some possible objections. In the end, I would say that this problem or argument is of great importance as it is brought up a lot and is a common question in many people throughout Christianity and atheism. Personally, I do not agree with the final conclusion of this argument, as I think that 1, God does in fact exist, and 2, because it is clear to see that evil does exist in our world, then God is making the choice not to eliminate all evil for some greater unforeseen purpose that we do not understand. Thank you.